Hey everybody, this is Vince Miller. Thank you so much for joining me for our devotional today. We're in Job chapter 2, verses 11 through 13. It reads this way. Now when Job's three friends heard of all this evil that had come upon him, they came each from his own place, Eliphaz the Temanite, Bildad the Shuhite, and Zophar the Naamathite. They made an appointment together to come to show him sympathy and comfort him. And when they saw him from a distance, they did not recognize him. And they raised their voices and wept. And they tore their robes and sprinkled dust on their heads towards heaven. And they sat with him on the ground 7 days and 7 nights. And no one spoke a word to him, for they saw that his suffering was very great. So now in the story of Job, we get to meet his three friends. And you'll notice that they recognized him from a distance. Yet they witnessed the despair in his situation. Job physically looks almost unrecognizable to them. And then there's this short, customary greeting. And then finally, they just sit with him, speechless, in the ministry of presence. You know, over 30 years ago, I recall encountering a very similar moment. My grandfather and mentor contracted terminal cancer, and he was pretty successful at hiding it from many of us. That was until he was finally admitted into the hospital, where he spent the final few days of his life. At the time I was away at college, it had been several months since I had seen him last, but I quickly headed home and went directly to the hospital and found him lying alone in a hospital bed. He too was almost unrecognizable. His skin was yellowed, his eyes were sunken back into his head, the hair was gone from his body, his muscles had deteriorated so much that his skin appeared to be hanging from his bone. You know, as I walked in, we talked for a few minutes until he was more than exhausted, after which I pulled up a chair and I just sat with him. And for the next 5 hours, that's all I did. And for 5 hours, I watched him die while listening to the ambient noise of his gasping for air. Gradually, the space between the gasps increased until finally he took his last breath. You know, sometimes the most comforting thing that we can say to people who are suffering is, well, nothing. In fact, I commend these three friends for sitting in silence with him for 7 days and 7 nights. The ministry of presence is powerful. Sometimes it's more powerful than anything that can be said. Besides, people say some pretty stupid things to people who are grieving or going through significant suffering. In fact, after the 7th day, these three friends are going to open their mouths. And as soon as they do, they're going to give some pretty awful advice because they've come to some wrong conclusions about God, what he's doing, and why he's doing it. However, these men right at this moment do exactly the right thing. They KMS, keep mouth shut. And it's commendable. So don't undervalue the ministry of presence by speaking into a suffering person's life. Instead, sit with them. It's powerful. Thank you so much for joining me for our devotional today. If you enjoyed it, share it with someone you know. Subscribe below, and I'll see you right back here again tomorrow.